Remember, if you submit a question, we're going to send you some swag. So who's this question from?
This question is from Janae Goodbrand.
So Janae, we're going to send you a Service Drive Revolution package with a shirt and a mug and some other fun stuff. So what is her question?
So Janae says, I work in an independent auto shop in a small town in Alberta, Canada. I got hired to be the service advisor and parts man for the automotive side of the business, but when I got hired, I had zero experience. As a service advisor, I know it's my job to be 100% attentive to the customer, but between running to my techs for information, parts runs, and answering the phones, and calling customers with quotes, etc., I find that I'm not giving my customer the attention they need. How can I effectively balance everything so that I can be there for the customer, create a trusting environment, and connect with them while fulfilling my other responsibilities? My boss has left the whole department to me with only the expectation to upsell and expect success with little guidance. And my heart aches for the customer because I know we can do better for them.
Good question. So, I mean, there's probably a bunch of answers to that. And probably one is being honest with your customers up front and telling them, like, the truth, right? Like, we're going to check it out, then we're going to need parts, and like just telling them the process and what happened. So we're going to check it out and figure out what's wrong with it. Then we're going to have to source the parts. Sometimes sourcing the parts, they have them locally, they don't, we have to go get them, but that takes a little, and just at the time of write-up, going through the steps of the process. Like when I was an advisor, I used to do that, but my intention behind doing it was getting the customers to pick up the phone when I called. Because, 100 years ago when I was an advisor, the thing was if the tech still had it in the bay, because our dispatch where I worked was such a disaster that if the tech pulled it out, it might be the next day before it went back in. Because, it was one of those places where it was so disorganized that by 2 o'clock you were calling all the customers you wrote up to tell them it would be tomorrow. And then be like, but I made an appointment a week ago. And you're like, yeah, well, the ownership here just doesn't care. That was my experience. So what I would tell them is like, here's the process. It's going to get dispatched to a tech. Once the tech has it in their stall, they're going to check it out and they're going to tell me what's wrong with it. I'm going to call you right then. And if we can get your authorization and you pick up the phone, so what's your day like? And I would be like, are you going to be in meetings today? What's the best number to call? Like I would go through all these things, but the customer then knew to be ready for my call because it could mean the car staying another day if they didn't. And it wasn't a bad thing to tell them that. It never turned them off. It actually kind of pulled them in closer to me because it was like, we're part of this together and here's how this works. And you have to do your part. I have to do my part. But if you're not available for your part, I can't do my part. Right? Telling them the truth. I used to always say to the other advisors I worked around, why don't you tell the customers the truth? The truth is once it gets in, we got to say yes or no. Or the other thing with that is I would get an authorization up front too. So I would say, hey, I'm going to give myself $2,000 to work with because if it's in there, we want to fix it, right? Yeah. We don't want to pull it in and out. So it helped with that. So I would say like having some sort of thing that you test out in the beginning to tell customers, okay, here's the process. Once it gets in the shop to a tech, we're going to check it out. Then I'm going to call you. You're going to okay the work. And then we're going to have to source the parts. And depending on if the parts are local or not, it could take a day or two to get the parts. And just walking them through what the timeline to repair is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, setting the expectation, anticipating needs. I think the key thing with all of that that you're saying there is finding a way to be proactive. Anything you can do to be proactive and anticipate their needs and your own and have a true goal of getting the customer back in their car in a timely manner. And
if you're saying that you feel bad that you're not meeting their expectations, you might not be able to change what you do, so change their expectations. Change the narrative, right?
Yeah.
Change what their expectations are.
Yeah.
Set them straight.
Yep.
So that would be one. Another one that I thought when you were reading that is like, I know a lot of independent shops where the parts get delivered 2 times a day. Like there's vendors out there that'll deliver. And I don't know, Alberta's pretty big. Like that's not a small town.
Yeah.
there's got to be parts vendors that will deliver to you that you don't have to go pick them up. Now, I know there's going to be weird situations, like maybe you have to go to a dealership or something like that, but there's also parts runners too. So a lot of times you can hire somebody that will go run parts for you. There's apps out there for TaskRabbit, things like that, where you could pay somebody $20 to go pick up the part and pass that along to the customer. So when you quote them the alternator, add in the $20 for the TaskRabbit. There's ways, you got to test these systems and figure out a good one. But I know in a lot of parts departments, you can't afford a driver full-time, but you can pass along the cost to the customer. So you can add in a TaskRabbit or something like that to get the parts picked up because you can't leave.
Yep.
And so thinking a little bit more outside the box that way with what sort of systems could I put in place that, hey, the customer might pay another $20 or you might just quote them another $20 and they don't know the difference, but you're not having to leave to go pick up a part. So getting vendors that will deliver the parts to you, and in the weird situations where you can't, have another solution that you're passing that on to the customer. You know when you're sourcing the part whether they're going to deliver or not, so you know if you should pack in $20, $30 for that.
Yeah.
So that would be one, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think when you look at some of these things, a lot of them you think are outside of your control when they're really not. More things that have to do with this are you're in control of, right? And,
yeah, because I can tell you when I rode service, a lot of the advisors felt like victims, and I knew that the system sucked, but I wasn't going to let that stop me from controlling the narrative. Yeah. I was going to control the narrative, because let's face it, there's no perfect system. No matter what, it's never perfect. Good question. Thank you. Who is it? Janae. Thanks for the question, Janae. We'll get your info and send you some swag. Thank you so much for watching this clip of Service Drive Revolution. Now you can catch the full episode on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, or wherever you consume your podcast. If you have any questions, go ahead and post them in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon so you're notified when we post new episodes. I'm Chris Collins, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Chris Bulldog Collins. And I'll see you again on the next episode.